Do you see what I've got in my hand?
A lightsaber.
That's exactly right. What we're doing here today, which is practicing the power of analytical depth in order to uncover the hidden dimension of the world. And there's probably, in my mind, no better and more accessible practicing ground than the study of Gemara. Because the study of Gemara is it's the same process, just in a different platform. What is the process of Gemara? You present it with a text, and the text is cryptic. It has an appearance, but the appearance isn't what it is underneath the surface. And by carefully unpacking and delving into it, analyzing and thinking beyond what appears to the eye, you discover there's another dimension, and then another dimension, and then another dimension. And therefore, by practicing the art of learning Gemara, you start to become a deeper thinker in all areas of your life, provided you make a conscious effort, which is so important, to do what's called bridging. It's not enough that you become, and some people do this. Unfortunately, we're not naturally prone towards integration. We become very focused and compartmentalized. So you do get people who are world famous in Sweden. It doesn't help if you come from even Norway, perhaps. You have people who are extremely clever in math, but for somehow they don't necessarily transport that computation skill to other areas of life. They don't abstract it and find out what is math, which is really tracing cause and effect and patterning, and then they don't necessarily apply that to the way that their mother-in-law turns up on a regular basis and trying to find the pattern of, hey, what's going on over there? So there's a problem of transportation. So you get people who are actually very clever in Gemara, but that's where it stops. So they don't actually use that deep, powerful art and science they've developed to take it elsewhere. And that's perhaps why, when we think about our system over here, it starts off not with Talmud, it starts off with thinking. How does it start off with thinking? That we said yesterday that the construction of a thought process has three components to it. There's the input, the processing, and the output. And just when you think there's sensory input or mental input, it requires precision, spatial orientation, and a host of other basic, what's called processes in order to have a successful input. I look at you in the room, visual input. I listen to what you're saying, auditory input. And then I need to compare it. I need to process it. I need to analyze it. I need to synthesize it. I need to do something with it. We are all constantly in this feedback loop of information, sensory information, auditory information, mental information entering into our heads. We do something with it, and then we behave accordingly. And when we can become metacognitive and we can actually differentiate between these different processes, then we can start to analyze where our thought processes or where our thinking goes wrong. Sometimes the reason why we're thinking badly is because the information that we have is insufficient. We didn't get it into our head. It went in vague, which is a problem. And then our processing will be corrupted and our output will be corrupted. Sometimes our comparison is not a good comparison, and other times the output is distorted because I don't have the words to express myself. I use the wrong words, and therefore even though I've got the right idea, it never comes out. So we have to be very scrupulous about making sure that all three stages of the thought process come into being. How does that impact us? In other words, it's important to introduce you to learning Gemara from that perspective, because then it demonstrates this is not some kind of archaic occupation with ancient Aramaic language and Talmudic law. No. This is the most thorough training you could ever get in how to think as a human being. It happens to be that we do this in Talmud. The Ramchal writes in the introduction to his book Derech Tvunos that actually teaching the logical skills could be done in isolation. But he chose in his work Derech Tvunos to use the Talmud as the example of how it actually operates. So there's something transcendent about this process which goes far beyond the words of the actual Gemara itself, but it's certainly needed. And the reason why that's important is because one has to understand that there is no fundamental differentiation between life and Torah and life. Kihem chayenu v'orech. These are the days of our life, and these are the length of our life. It has to be embodied in the way we think, in the way we talk, every aspect of our life. And therefore, becoming Talmudically wise is either problematic because it's in a specific localized area, or it's redemptive because it can be applied to every relationship, every understanding, and every situation. So based on these three components of the thought processes, we have the three basic fundamental principles, the pillars of all textual understanding. And every time you learn anything, and certainly when you learn Gemara, you need to put into place, number one, make sure that the structure is correct, that's your input stage. Then power questioning opens up the capacity to process. And finally, paradigm shift isolates, demonstrates, and articulates what has come out of that process. So every kind of Talmudic structure requires understanding of the parts and the whole and their interaction. Questioning becomes the driving power behind analysis. Essentially, what questions are to your brain is what an on switch is to any mechanical device. In order for it to operate, you have to put on. You have to switch it on. How do you switch on your brain, boy? How do you think? How do you switch on think? What's the mode? When you put in the mode, how do you put on think mode? That's the on switch. The on switch is question. How do I switch on? Question. Without question, your brain remains off. Zolden, your brain remains off unless you're questioning. And then finally, you have to be able to be mentally flexible, not become caught in some kind of narrow way of thinking. Be prepared to let go of not only what you thought previously, but the actual parameters wherein you thought, which is much, much harder. And when you do that, you are primed to become an excellent Talmudic scholar. So this is called structure, power questioning, paradigm shift. You need to structure poperize every text you come across, and it's sequential. First, you need to understand the parts and their relationship with another. Then you have to go into the process of questioning, and finally you have to issue out the innovation, the chidush, and every single textual analysis has to follow these three steps. If it doesn't follow these three steps, this is what happens. A person starts to get the structure right, and he jumps into a powerful question. Do you know what happens? He just destroyed the building he was building. So in order to do this, you require thought discipline and restraint of impulsivity, because you may get to the structure and there may be this question that just jumps out at you. You think, oh my gosh, I need to deal with this question. Write it down, put it to the side, put it on the back burner, wait, get the structure clear. Then you've got all the free reign to question as much as you choose. When this hits the Mishnah, what you land up with is MAT 353, which stands for Mishnah Analysis Technique. Obviously, when you start off learning the Mishnah, there are two things you need to do before you hit Matt. If you have a friend called Matt, you shouldn't hit him. I've got a friend called Matt. You've got a friend called Matt. You've got friends who've got a father called Matt, at least. Don't hit him. So, but when you do hit Matt, which is Mishnah Analysis Technique, you need to do two things beforehand. You're confronted with a Mishnah. So many times people are given a Mishnah to learn, and the instructions they're given is, learn the Mishnah. It's a little bit like taking a person that's never swum and throwing them into a pool zolder and saying, swim. If you've never swum and you're thrown into a pool and you're told to swim, what happens? Two options. It depends if it's the deep end or the shallow end. If it's a shallow end, you're okay. If it's a deep end, you're in trouble. Because if you don't know how to swim, you can't swim. You need to be taught technique. You need to be taught how to. This is an amazing thing, Teddy. Very few people teach how to Gemara. They just say, go learn, go learn. What are the chances of you doing it well? Perhaps if you throw a person in the pool enough times and he sees people swimming around him, he'll become very average at swimming. It's possible. But imagine if you sit with him like any good swimming teacher and you say, okay, I want you to work on your stroke. When you're swimming crawl or freestyle, I want you to make sure that as your hand goes back, if you go like this and you open up your fingers wide, it's going to reduce your capacity to propel yourself forward because the water will go between your fingers. Close your fingers, and then as you enter in your stroke, make sure it goes near your ear, because if it's like this, so then you're overexpending effort and you want to have smooth, graceful movements in the water, and then make sure that your hand goes into the water like that, because if it goes like that, then you're creating friction and resistance. And actually mastering that requires a coach sitting by you and saying, okay, good, no, more relaxed, more. It requires coaching. So for some ludicrous reason, people think that when it comes to Gemara, which is far more complex than swimming, you could just like, oh, come on, there you go, just do it. It's not going to work. First thing, coaching skill. When you see a Mishnah for the very first time, the first thing you do is you read it through in a loud voice, in Hebrew, 4 times. And that allows you familiarity with the text and awakens within you the conceptual, subconscious relationship to any of those topics in the Mishnah that may be relevant. Then you translate each and every word accurately. If you make one error in translation, even the difference between plural and singular, it means that your understanding of the text will be compromised, which means your reasoning will be compromised, which means your outcome will be compromised. So if you get this stage wrong, there's no hope for you moving forward. It's quite funny because some people think they can learn Hebrew text without learning Hebrew. So people, but I don't really know Hebrew. So I say, oh, yeah, you get the hang of it. You know, like read Shakespeare in English. I'm sure you'll just like pick it up. You'll just pick it up. My bare bodkin. You know what everyone knows what bare bodkin is? Really? So if you don't know Hebrew and you can't translate accurately, you're shooting yourself in the foot and you'll never ever be able to know how to learn. In order to understand the text, you need to understand, listen to this. In order to understand the text, you need to understand the language in which the text has been written. Whoa. Who would have thought? So once you've done that, and you've read through 4 times, you've translated accurately, the next thing you do is you do, wow! What are the parts? How many? Why in this order? We did this yesterday. At this point in time, I will cause you to look at your text. If everyone has a text in front of them from yesterday, that's great. If you don't, here is one. So now, when we saw the Gemara yesterday, the Mishnah yesterday, we broke it down into its constituent parts. And the Mishnah says as follows. Hamenyech ezakad, a person placed a pitcher or a jug, b'reshus harabim, inside of the public domain. Ubo acher, and someone else came, v'niskal ba, and he stumbled into it, v'shavra, and he broke it. Potter is exempt from paying. V'im huzak ba, and if he was damaged by it, ba'al hachavis chayev b'niskoi, the owner of the barrel is required to pay him for his damages. And we subdivided the Mishnah. What are the parts? How many and why in this order? We subdivided the Mishnah into 4 parts. And the reason why there are 4 parts and not 2, Avraham, Hamenyech ezakad. Part 1, Hamenyech ezakad, a person placed a jug, Hamenyech ezakad, b'reshus harabim, in a public domain. Someone else, uvo acher v'niskal ba, and someone else came and stumbled on it, v'shav, and he broke it. Part 1. Part 1. Do you know why that's part 1, Joy Dagua?
It's the case.
That's right. What's part 2?
The ruling.
And what's the ruling?
The ruling says he'd be potter.
Say again?
He would be exempt.
He would be exempt. So why do you call those 2 separate parts Joy Dagua?
Because they're separate. You have a case, and based on the case, you have an outcome based on that.
Meaning they have a different function in the text. You could say, but 1 second, aren't there 6 parts? Hamenyech ezakad, part 1, uva acher, part 2. No, because all of those parts are part of the case. And the case has a certain function. Just like I've got here a watch, and I've got a strap. Now, the watch and the strap the same thing, or are they two things? No, they two separate. They're differentiated because the strap's got a different function to the watch. I can take the strap off and the watch still exists. So when you understand how to break up a Mishnah, Katzenstein, when you understand how to break up a Mishnah, you recognize that you have to identify the different operating function of each part of the Mishnah. That's why this Mishnah's got 4 parts, because it's got case, ruling, case, ruling. Person put something in a public domain, someone else came, tripped and fallen, and broke it. What's the din? What should be? Exempt. If you got damaged by it, what's the din? What should be? The other guy's liable to pay for him. Okay, good. Now that is structure. Until now, all we've done is structure. In other words, all we've done, we haven't learned the Mishnah, we've just begun the learning process at the very, very beginning. In order to learn the Mishnah, we have to do dips. Spelled D-I-I-P-S, dips. Tomer.
Yes.
As a master of cuisine, could you explain to me perhaps the power of the dip?
The power of the dips is the ability to break apart and analyze every constituent part of the Mishnah.
That's what it does in food. I was speaking more about food. The fact that you're a master of cuisine doesn't mean that you understand how to learn Talmud better, but it should give you a lot of insight into what the function of a dip in the meal is.
The dip of the meal
Yes.
in order to draw the appetite.
Ooh! Now, like say you got like a random piece of challah. Without a dip, with a random piece of challah with a dip. What's the difference, Tomer, in the language of cooking?
In the language of cooking, the dip allows the piece of challah to sing its song.
There you go. The dip allows the piece of challah to sing its song. Dips allow the Mishnah to sing its song. You want the Mishnah to sing its song, you got to dip it into the dips. Dips are 5 questions you ask yourself as you negotiate the Mishnah. The first one is details. I'm going to tell you what these are and then I'll explain to you what they mean. The second one is illustration. The third is inference. The fourth is principle. The fifth is source. When you take a Mishnah and you ask these 5 questions, your Mishnah will start to sing. You will have the same equivalent of experience of either eating dry challah or eating challah dipped into the most delicious of all dips. And this is what these things are. So details is you have to look at the details of the text. And you have to notice, is there anything strange? Is there anything extra? And if so, why? Say, you have to say the Mishnah. Strange, extra, why? Is there anything strange? Is there anything extra? And if so, why? So details means you look at the text of the Mishnah and you see, is there anything strange, extra? And if so, why? Illustration. You need to create in your mind's eye a vivid video of exactly what took place in the case until you can actually see it happening in front of your eyes. Until you've created a vivid video of what's taken place on the scene in the Mishnah, you will be lacking in your understanding and you'll be held back in your comprehension. Inference. I don't know how to write this in short terms, but the Mishnah has got 2 directions of education. Number 1 is what's stated, and number 2 is what's implied by what's stated. So for example, if I say a child of 13 becomes a man and he can make kiddush, I can make an inference that below 13 he's unable to make kiddush. That's an inference. So when you are inferring, it means you have to look at the text of the Mishnah and not only deduce what the text is teaching me by what it says, but also what is it teaching me by what it doesn't say. In Hebrew, one's called legufa for the body of the text, and one's called lediyuka for its inference. Sometimes the purpose of the entire Mishnah is actually not for what's stated, but what can be implied by what's stated. So you have to anticipate that and do the inference. Principle is the logical mechanic behind the Mishnah's reasoning. Every Mishnah has a logical mechanic behind it, and the source could be two origins. It could be rabbinic, or it could be Torah. Then it splices. If it's rabbinic, it could be a decree, which means it's a fence around the Torah law, or it could be an enactment. An enactment means a rabbinical invention for some reason, like Purim, like Kiddush, like Havdalah. All of those are enactment. An enactment. If it's Torah, it could be one of three things. It could be a verse. It could be logic. Logic has a status of Torah. And it could be what's called halacha leMoshe miSinai. There were certain halachot that have got zero textual reference. They were simply passed down orally throughout the generations, and they've got the status of a Torah law. Logic has the status of a Torah law, and obviously verses have got the status of a Torah law. So when you go through your Mishnah, imagine as if you knew how to learn a Mishnah. Look at this protocol. It's like learning how to swim, being coached. When you see a Mishnah for the first time, well, what do I do? What do I do? Read it through 4 times, loud, happy voice. What do I do? What do I do? Translate each and every word accurately to the nth degree. But then what do I do? What do I do? Ask the first 3 questions. What are the parts? How many? Why in this order? Okay, what do I do? What do I do? Then you go on to, now that you've got the structure clear, you know there are 4 parts of the Mishnah. There's a case, there's a ruling, there's a case, there's a ruling. Now you can start analysis. Now you can start processing. Well, what do I do? How do I do that? How do I do that? Number 1, look at the Mishnah. Is there anything strange, extra, and if so, why? Okay, but what do I do next? Then you look at the Mishnah, vividly illustrate so you can see the video happening in front of you. Okay, then what do I do? Make sure that you've checked out all the inferences and understood what the words mean and what's implied by the words. What do I do? Figure out the logical principle. Extract from the case a logical principle that you can understand. Then what do I do? Then make sure you've understood the source of the Mishnah. Is it Doraisa? Is it Rabbanan? If it's Doraisa, it's from the Torah. Is it a verse? Is it Lachal Moshe Sinai? Is it a Svara? If it's Rabbanan, is it the Gzeira? Is it the Takona? Yes, China.
Can you give an example of logic?
The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, how do we know that if I come over to you and I say, hey Jones, how you doing this morning, bro? How you doing? Can you give me your shirt back, please? My shirt, sorry. Can you give me my shirt? That nice black shirt of mine that you're wearing.
My shirt.
Liar. It's my shirt.
Prove it.
No, you prove it.
Got me.
Already? Great. Let's go. Who's the onus of proof? Who's got the burden of proof? Hamoitzi michaver lavaraya. That's what Gemara says. The Gemara says hamoitzi michaver lavaraya. The Gemara says it brings it from a verse. The Gemara says, why do you need a verse? It's logical that the person in possession of the object, the assumption is it belongs to them. I need to bring the proof, not you. You don't have to bring the proof that you own it. I have to bring the proof that what appears to be yours is not yours. That's logic.
So it's just like common sense then. There's
Correct. We would probably call it common sense. meaning it seems to be a basic understanding of how things function. But it does get tricky, to be fair. Can get tricky, to be fair. Okay.
It's common sense. Why isn't there a pasuk?
No, this is an alternative. Either it's a pasuk, or else it's common sense, and then it does not require pasuk because you know it automatically. So the Gemara says, how do you know that when you try to extract someone from a person, that the burden of proof is on the extractor and not the person holding the property? The answer is because it's logical, that when I come to you and you in possession, if I want to disrupt the status quo, I need to be the one the burden of proof is on me. Good? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd now like you in chavrusas, just group up with the person next to you, and now I'd like you to take this Mishnah, and I would like you to do all of these 5 steps. Is there anything in the Mishnah which is strange or extra, and if so, why? I would like you to vividly illustrate the Mishnah until you can see it happening in your mind's eye. I would like you to figure out, is there anything that could be inferred from the Mishnah, if so, what? I would like you to understand what is the principle behind the Mishnah, and I would like you to identify, is the Mishnah of rabbinic or Torah origin? Now, an important note. What happens if you're going through this process and you're asking these questions and you don't have an answer? For example, you may not know if it's rabbinic or Torah in origin. Do you know what? Guess. Because since there's going to be a checking system, that you're not going to be stopping your analysis of the Mishnah with your analysis, it's going to be corroborated or disproved by the Gemara and by the commentators, you can feel free to be explorative. You don't have to be scared to explore and to suggest. And another point, if you have no answer to your question, that's not a problem. That's actually a solution, because there's nothing more powerful than an unanswered question to drive you to be curious and to develop more understanding, more depth, and more curiosity in regard to the topic. You got it? Okay, so sidle up to your chavrusa and start the analysis process, following those rules, and I will walk around making a nuisance of myself.
A few moments later.
Let's do a bit of a sum up. So let's go through and see in the Mishnah. We'll start off with details. Is there anything strange or extra in the Mishnah? And gets a question from Tiber.
Yeah, so I pointed out two
Strangenesses.
Two pairs of details that I find to be odd.
Go for it.
In the first case, the object that is being tripped over is a chad, versus in the second case, the object that is described as the owner's object is a chabet.
Glaring problem in the Mishnah. It begins by describing the object by one name, and then by the end of the Mishnah it's called something else. That's a bizarre and extremely disturbing notion. How can you do that? It should say Baal Hakad, or it should say Haminiachet Chavit, but it can't start off with Kad and end off with Chavis. Excellent. Now, what I'm going to do now, just to show you how powerful your observation is, and to reveal to you the secret of dips. Here's the secret of dips. Pass your Gemara. Look at the first line of the Gemara. First line the Gemara says, just after the Mishnah, Pasach b'chad v'siyem b'chaviz. The first kasha the Gemara asks is, how can the Mishnah open up with kad and conclude with chavis? Now, on a simple level, I guessed the Gemara's question. No, you didn't. You used the same process of analysis as the Gemara, so automatically you arrived at the same question. What is the goal of Gemara? The goal of Gemara is to teach you how to analyze a Mishnah. So what is the 353 Mishnah analysis technique? It's teaching you how to do to the Mishnah what the Gemara does to the Mishnah. How do you know when you're a successful Talmudic scholar, when you can examine a Mishnah and arrive at all the questions that the Gemara does? You've anticipated it already. You've gone through the Mishnah, and how do you do that? All you need to do is follow 353 Mishnah analysis technique, and there'll be an almost 100% guarantee that you will be able to anticipate all the questions of the Gemara. What does that mean? That means you're learning how to think like a Gemara. Isn't that profound, and what a wonderful gift that is to us? Now, this is a crazy thing, Ari. There are people that learn for years, and instead of appreciating this art of analysis, do you know what they do? They say, oh, pointless spending time in the Mishnah because the Gemara is going to speak about it. And in doing so, they defeat the entire purpose of the way the Gemara is designed, which was to teach you how to learn. Teach you how to learn what? Teach you how to learn a Mishnah. So therefore, when you learn the Mishnah, the crucial thing to do is to learn the Mishnah. How should you learn it? Read it through loud 4 times, accurately translate. 353 Mishnah analysis, and get the structure of the parts, how many were in this order. Then, details, what's strange, what's extra, vivid picture, vivid video, inference, principle, source, and you will slam every kash of the Gemara. And what happens is, as we go through the Gemara, I'll point out how the Gemara and the Rishonim use the techniques we have just been taught to analyze the Mishnah. Number 2, Benjamin Tiber.
And the other detail that I noticed was the Hamniya and the Baal Habayis. There's 2 different words to describe the same person.
Excellent. Why in the beginning of the Mishnah do we say the placer, and in the end of the Mishnah we call that same person the owner of, this is the owner of the object, because now we don't know what it's called. Excellent. Great point. Good. Anything else? Tom.
On a similar note, this is from Ari Lavinia, who said that there's a difference between patur and chayav benezko, where patur obviously means exempt, and then in the second case we have a ruling of he is obligated to pay for all his damages, so it's different wording.
Correct. In other words, there's an extra word put in there. Why does it say chayav benizkoi? It should simply say chayav. It doesn't say potter min izkoi. It doesn't say he's exempt from damages. So why does it say he's liable for damages? He's liable. He's liable.
In this case, he could have said lo chayav benezko.
Yeah, that would be clumsy. So that's not really it shouldn't have said that. Patur, the Mishnah always strives to write things in the most concise way possible. So you'd never replace one word with 2 words. Good, excellent.
We know that patur exclusively means, like, could it not mean something else? As in, could it not be exempt from, I don't know, like, we don't
Exempt from saying Kriya Shema in the morning?
Well, we don't know whose object it is in the first
Exempt from eating matzah on Pesach night?
Sure, but I'm in relation
Exempt
to
from
in
wearing
relation to
tzitzis
that
when you're
fact.
walking in Tel Aviv?
Maybe.
Maybe not. It means exempt.
Correct, but to who? We don't have a
Well, we don't have a huge range of options. You broke something.
But is it the owner of the card or is it someone who placed the card there?
New unrelated question.
Or related, that's what I said.
New related question. What's ambiguous in the Mishnah is the point you raised. At the end of the Mishnah, it calls this person the owner of the vessel. In the beginning, it calls him the placer. Is that the same person, or is that 2 different people? If it's the same person, why did it describe him in his placement in the beginning and in his ownership in the latter? When you're thinking about what things mean in the Mishnah, you have to use Occam's razor to slice off any potential arbitrary or convoluted understandings. Therefore, do you know what Occam's razor is, Teddy?
Sounds familiar.
Good. Occam's razor is the principle that the simplest explanation is the best. It could be that Zechariah is a reincarnation of Einstein based on his outcrops of hair. Could be. But there's no reason to assume other than his hairstyle. So therefore, that's not good. That's not a good explanation. Simply speaking, it's just the way he likes to wear his hair. It could be that these lights above are spaceships landing. But it's a very, very hard thing to justify. In other words, another way of saying it, Benjamin Katzenstein, is when I'm going to scratch my beard, I can take two directions. I can scratch my beard like this. I could scratch my beard like that, but I wouldn't do that. Occam's razor means slice it off. So now, simply speaking, it's lovely, such drama. My gosh, how exciting. Okay, there's usually the warning. The warning precedes the siren. Sometimes it's a warning without siren. If there is a siren, there's a shelter 1 floor down, 2 floors down, which is a very secure shelter where we will flee if we hear the woo sound.
It says Geschmack Torah incoming.
Good. That's what it is. I always wonder what these warnings were for. So, therefore, we've got two possible ways of understanding. Well, we've got many possible ways of understanding the Mishnah. But what's the simplest way of understanding it? The simplest way of understanding it is we're discussing a single case between two litigants, not a case between multiple litigants. Could we say it maybe is? We could. But the simplest explanation is there was a guy that put his vessel in the public domain. Case 1, it got broken by someone stumbling over it. Case 2, the person that stumbled over it got hurt.
Okay.
And therefore, it doesn't, since we haven't openly introduced new players into the picture, we assume that the players are limited to the placer, who is also the owner, and the stumbler, who is also the victim. Good. Yes, Ben Katzenstein.
I want to make a inference.
Oh, nice.
That it says Balachavi in the second clause. So therefore, the first clause is probably not, who's patur is probably not the Balachavi. It's talking about the person who tripped.
True. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
100%.
Because it leaves it out. But it wasn't clear to me because it just says patur there. Like
100%.
after to break it up, it's a tip. Yeah.
Spot on. Okay. One could, Zachariah.
So Tom's kasha is contagious. It's affected me.
Oh gosh, that's problematic.
And so I'm thinking
That's a problem with the viruses. Go on.
In the first case,
From
we say that he is exempt, but it could be potentially that the person who tripped is exempt from paying the placer damages, or it could be that the placer is not the owner, and the placer is exempt from paying the owner damages.
Do you see what I've got in my hand?
A lightsaber.
That's exactly right. Do you know whose lightsaber it is?
Who's got it?
No. Occam's. Beware, because you don't want it in your general direction. Thank you very much, Zachariah, for your contribution. Cole.
In the first case, it specifies the domain. In the second case, it doesn't.
Because it's assumed that it's a constant. It doesn't need to speak about it again. It's spoken about already. Good. Joey.
Oh, if I may.
Please do.
Teddy and I saw something here. Why in the first case doesn't it just say that Ba'acher v'shavra? Why does it have to say Niskel, that he stumbled upon it first?
Excellent. Say more.
Meaning it's...
Do an inference, baby!
Basically, seemingly that this was done perhaps accidentally or...
Why do you have to be so underconfident? He stumbled on it. Do you stumble on things deliberately? No, then you wouldn't be stumbling.
Yeah.
Which means as follows. Go for it. We're talking about a case when the person stumbled over the vessel in the public domain, but, take out the thumb, let's see it, sing-song intonation, do the whole katoot, sing-song intonation, go!
So the inference is, if it was on purpose, he would be chayiv.
Boom! Excellent. Meaning, there's an inference. Stumbling, yes, exempt, but breaking, no. Why? Because the Mishnah will always draw the line at the greatest chidush, the greatest novel idea. What would be more innovative? That if you broke something deliberately, you're exempt, or if you inadvertently broke something, you're exempt? It would be much more revolutionary to say.
That was on purpose, and then you exempt.
So therefore, if the Mishnah says only when you stumble, it means to exclude anything beyond that point. This is the line. It's the line, mate. It's a line. That's how they say it in American. The line. Okay? Aren't you from America, Ari?
Yeah.
Come on, own up. Come on.
Yes, Lakewood's a different.
A different country.
Yeah.
Good. Leo, do you want to ask something, or are you just playing with your pen?
I want to make a similar inference.
Oh, go on then. Yo.
It says which maybe implies that she was in.
Whoa. Where's the maybe? Why are you taking our insurance, boy? Okay. Come to the party with the full brunt of your being. Okay.
That would be chayv.
There you go. When is it exempt? The exemption applies because it's a public domain. It's a shared space. But if you start going into other people's places and breaking their stuff, badi, you're chayev. Excellent. Tomer.
So we had the same point, but we weren't sure whether that applied to the safer as well.
Tell me more.
Yes, it would be in the Rishus HaYachid, then you would be chayev on paying the damages. But if you were to be damaged in the process, if the owner would be patur on paying any of your damages.
Excellent. So what Tomer is saying is that perhaps the exemption for breaking it inadvertently is applicable to the public domain, but the liability for your damages is true whether it be the public or private domain. That's what Tomer is suggesting. And we'd have to think about why would that be true. And let's think about it. Well, if in the private domain you would not be liable, you would for sure be liable for breaking it, what would the rationale for that be? I would assume the rationale for that would be is that it's not your property, and therefore if you're going to walk into someone else's property, the onus of guarding yourself from damages is purely upon you. If it's a public domain, people shouldn't put their stuff around. But in the private domain, I can put whatever I want, wherever I want it. And therefore, if you're not looking where you're going, buddy, that's your problem. You're going to be liable no matter what. No matter what, you're going to be liable. Similarly, if you're going to be liable, which means you're looking where you're going, if you get hurt, it's your fault. It's not my fault.
So I'm not saying like that.
Right, you're not saying like that.
No, but in the
You don't want to think rationally straight like an arrow. You want to think like a banana. No, sorry, I'm joking. Go on. Okay.
Slightly bananish.
Go on.
That maybe if the person then gets damaged by the item in the Rishus HaYachid, then that enlightens us to the fact that...
In other words, you're saying maybe what I'm saying is not imperative. Maybe it's like this, that when you break something in the private domain, you should have looked where you're going, but even though you should be responsible for breakage, but he still retains responsibility for your damages. Maybe it will be like a kind of a diversifying of the actual cause or responsibility of damages. And we'd have to figure that out. It would probably be dependent on when you're entering into their private domain, what are the conditions of entrance? Like, does the person accept upon him, does he give you, first of all, are you entering with permission, not with permission? Oh, okay, here we go. To reorientate ourselves after a brief interlude. Certainly like a great way to freshen up, get the adrenaline pumping, stop slipping into some kind of slumber. Yeah, okay, so anything else strange, extra, and if so, why? I think we've done it. Put it in the Rishus HaRabim. Someone else came, Segal. We explored the Rishus HaRabim in terms of inference. We explored stumbling in terms of inference. We explored the fact that it says patur and not patur benizkoi. It says chai benizkoi, which really shouldn't say benizkoi. So I think we've done a good job of details and inference simultaneously. Let's talk about illustration. In order to illustrate, you need to create a moving picture in your mind's eye, a video of what happened. In order to do so, you need to identify who are the players in the case. How many are there? What did they say? What transpired? What did it look like? And it's crucial at this point in time to attempt to fill in all the missing details. Now, you can't know that the way you fill in the missing details is correct. That's what makes it fun. Because since the mission doesn't provide sufficient information, by you taking a stance as to what occurred in the case, you open up yourself and your mind to a lot of reasoning. So the way you begin illustration should be something along the lines of, it was a fine Monday morning. I've already located the scene in time. And our protagonist, whose name is Reuven, was walking down the street, the open area street nearby the market of Tzipori in northern Israel. I've located in space, time and space. And as he's walking down the road, 100 meters ahead of him was his friend Shimon. Shimon had just taken his 5-liter earthenware vessel, and he was going to fill it up with oil. And as Shimon was walking down the street, he suddenly realized that he had forgot something in his home, which was just across the road. So he placed his jug in the public domain. He ran off to fetch the thing he'd forgotten home. Whilst he was away, Reuven continued his path along the street, and he was thinking about lunch, and that was very distracting for him. And then he hears this tremendous crash. He looks down, and there's a shattered earthenware vessel at his feet. And he goes, oh my gosh, which idiot left this here? Look, it's a public domain. It's ridiculous. And he's kind of tutting to himself, and all of a sudden comes Shimon, and he goes, what do you do? He says, what did I do? What do you mean, what did I do? He said, you broke my jug. I broke your jug, eh? Which kind of fool leaves his jug in the middle of a public domain? Which kind of fool doesn't look where he's going? It's your fault, it's my fault, your fault, it's your fault, your fault. Okay, says Reuven to Shimon, you were negligent for putting your vase in this public. Says Shimon, you were negligent for not looking where you're going. Do you know what? Let's take this off to a Jewish court of ecclesiastical law. And off they go to Beis Din. Scenario number 1, illustration. Can you see it? Now, bear this in mind, because we've illustrated the case. Beautiful thoroughfare, broad daylight, single vase, person trips over it. Bear that all in mind, because that's going to become very relevant, because what it essentially means is when you go to Beis Din and the Beis Din look at the case and what's been presented, they say, okay. Well, no, Reuven, who was walking down this public thoroughfare, he doesn't have to look where he's going. He's exempt. And the onus of responsibility is essentially on Shimon, who placed it there, to not put things down in the public domain. So we derived the principle. The principle we derived is people don't have to look where they're going, and the onus is on the placer and not on the walker. Okay, interesting. So we've done details, illustration, inference we've done a lot of, and now we need to go into source, because we've done principle. But the second case. Second case goes as follows. Reuven's walking down the public, same scenario. He breaks the jug, and then all of a sudden he feels a piercing pain in his right foot. One of the shards of the jug has gone straight through the sole of his sandal and lacerated the sole of his foot. He sits there on the floor writhing in pain, and he has to be rushed off to hospital, and he has 6 stitches. He's immobile for a number of days, and therefore he goes to Shimon and he says, I want you to pay for my damages. Shimon says, buddy, you should have looked where you're going. The court says, no, he shouldn't have, and the damages are awarded to Reuven, the victim and the breaker. Good? And the principle seems to be a simple principle that the onus of the pedestrian is not to look where he's going. He doesn't have an onus to look where he's going, whereas the onus is on the person who's placing things in the public domain to be careful not to place something which could be broken. Is this a Torah or is this a rabbinic law?
Torah.
Where does it say it? Is it a verse? Is it a lachol Moshe Messina? Is it a svara?
I would have associated it with the principle of an eye for an eye.
What is the principle of an eye for an eye, if you could be so open and tell me?
If I'm going to be brave enough to...
You're going to have to be pretty brave because you have no idea what's coming for you. So what do you think is the principle of an eye for an eye?
Well, some might say that...
That's such insurance. What do you say? Say it. Come on, own it.
I think it effectively says that if someone damages you in any way, the action somehow cause damage to you, in this case, let's say it's an eye, that you don't actually have the right to go damage their eye, but the value of the eye is owed to you.
So you're taking the verse, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and you're saying that verse is not literal. If you de-eye a person, you are not then de-eyed by him. That's what you're saying.
That's what I think it means.
That's what you are tentatively saying, noting that you're treading on thin ice. So you're absolutely correct. In fact, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is a classic example of the differentiation between the oral and the written Torah. The written Torah says an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, which means if I go and I pull out your eye, you come and you pull out mine. And it doesn't mean that at all. In fact, if I pull out your eye, you can't touch my eye. But what happens is I have to pay you for the eye itself, unemployment that you suffered as a result of the lost eye, pain and suffering, embarrassment, and doctor's bills. But the verse of an eye for an eye only applies for situations where I physically damaged you. But this over here, it's not me damaging you, it's my object is causing you damage, which is one step removed, and therefore it doesn't fit into the category of what's called Odom HaMazik, man the damager, but this is your articles. In fact, what is this? There are four major categories of damagers. A person who damages, your property that damages, for example, your ox. Fire, which means that you create a potential damager which has in collaboration with the wind causes damage. And the final one is pit. You dig a hole in the public domain and someone trips and falls into it. This is a pit. This is a classic pit. It's a bor b'shus harabim. And therefore the liability over here is because there's a bor which sounds like it's a d'oraisa law. Correct.
But not an eye for an eye.
But it's not an eye for an eye. So which verse is it? Don't know. Just to wrap it up just quite quickly, so we've done details, illustration, inference, principle, and source. Isn't that amazing? So now we know what we're doing. Now this is a very small Mishnah. We may rank it up to a more complex Mishnah, but this is the principle. So beautifully illustrated. We still have to do www.chizr.com. We'll leave that for tomorrow. I want to thank you all for attending. Please feel free to come tomorrow. And if you happen to bring copious amounts of, whiskey, snacks, sushi, and the like, we will not refuse it. Sei gesund.